Most people think they know Arizona, but what if the most fascinating parts of this state are the ones nobody ever talks about? Scattered across this desert are entire towns that were once full of thousands of people, full of life, full of noise, and that today sit completely forgotten. And most people drive right past them without ever knowing they existed. 6 of those towns are what we are counting down today, and by the time we reach number 1, you were going to wish you had found these places a long time ago. Let's go. Town 6, Ruby, Santa Cruz County. The road to Ruby is unpaved, and the further you drive, the quieter everything gets. Like the desert is slowly pulling you away from the rest of the world. And then the buildings appear, and the first thing that hits you is that they are actually still standing. Not foundations, not rubble, real buildings. Around 25 of them, including a schoolhouse, a jail, and a mine manager's house. All weathered down to a pale, silvery gray from decades of sun. The whole place feels preserved rather than just abandoned, which is not what you expect when you are this far from anywhere. Ruby took on its permanent name in 1912 when the post office was named after the store owner's wife, Lil Ruby Andrews, and the camp simply became known by that name from that point forward. The Montana mine was pulling out gold, silver, lead, zinc, and copper, and by the mid-1930s, the population had reached around 1,200 people, enough to fill a school with 150 students. The mine closed in 1940, the post office shut in 1941, and Ruby was completely empty. The reason it looks the way it does today is because of how remote it is. It was just too far out for most people to bother stripping apart over the years. So what was left simply stayed. You can walk into the schoolroom and still feel the shape of what it was, and stand at the jail looking through iron bars thinking about the kind of community that needed that building in the first place. What would it feel like to be the last person to walk out of a place you spent your whole life building? Town 5, Swansea, Paz County. Getting to Swansea means about 25 miles of rough gravel road through open desert, and by the time you arrive, you are genuinely far from everything, in a way that feels physical rather than just geographical. What makes Swansea different is that this place was not thrown together by people chasing fast money. It was designed with real intention. Formally established around 1909, Swansea had an electric light company, a post office, a railroad depot, saloons, restaurants, and barbershops, and a population of around 500 people, connected to the wider world by the Arizona and Swansea Railroad that began operating in 1910. The American Smelting and Refining Company bought and rebuilt much of the town in 1914, but the end of World War I brought a massive drop in copper demand, and the Great Depression finished what falling prices started. By 1937, the mine shut down for good, and Swansea was completely empty. The smelter foundations are still out there today, the adobe walls are still partially standing, and the old railroad grade is still visible, slowly being reclaimed by the desert. The Bureau of Land Management now protects the site, and on most days, there are no other visitors when you show up, just the wind moving through empty doorways and the remains of something that was built to last. Think about the people who ran electric lines through the desert because they genuinely believed in what they were building. At what point do you think they accepted it was over? And this is the thing that starts to land around this point in the list. These were not rough, temporary settlements. These were real towns, built by real people who had every reason to believe they were building something permanent. And Arizona is quietly full of them. Town 4, Gleeson, Cochise County. Gleeson sits about 16 miles east of Tombstone, living permanently in the shadow of one of the most famous towns in American history. And almost everyone who visits the area never makes it out here. The ruins appear gradually as you drive in, scattered across the hillside in an almost casual way. Foundation outlines and rusting equipment and the kind of structural remains that take imagination to read properly. But then there is the jail, and the jail is something else. Built in 1910 at a cost of $1,778, it is solid, thick-walled with iron-barred windows, remarkably intact compared to everything around it, and now open to the public as a small museum on selected Saturdays each month. Gleeson began in the 1870s as a turquoise mining camp before reinventing itself after Irish miner John Gleeson discovered large copper deposits and opened the Copper Bell Mine in 1900. A post office opened that same year, and the town grew to support around 500 people, with a hotel, general store, and hospital. A fire destroyed 28 buildings in 1912, but the town rebuilt because the mines were still producing. After the war, the ore ran out, and the post office finally closed on March 31st, 1939. A handful of residents still maintain some of the structures today, which gives Gleeson this unusual quality of being not quite alive and not quite gone. And sometimes that is more unsettling than a town that emptied out completely. Town 3, Fairbank, Cochise County. Fairbank was never really a mining town. It was the town that made mining possible for everyone else. First settled in 1881, when the railroad came through and formally established on May 16, 1883, Fairbank existed as the closest railroad depot to Tombstone, then one of the largest cities in the entire American West. The town was named for Nathaniel Kellogg Fairbank, a Chicago investor who helped finance the railroad, and at its peak supported around 100 residents with a general store, saloon, Wells Fargo office, and railroad depot. When Tombstone's mines flooded in 1886, the decline began, and by the mid-1970s, the last residents had left when the buildings were deemed unsafe. The schoolhouse is still standing today, preserved by the Bureau of Land Management as part of the San Pedro Riparian National Conservation Area, and the Mercantile Building, with its distinctive facade, is still there too, with cottonwood trees lining the nearby riverbank. What stays with you at Fairbank is how clearly you can still read why someone chose this exact spot to build here. The river, the flat ground, the natural crossing point, the logic of it all still visible, even though everything that made it useful has been gone for decades. Have you ever thought about how many places you pass through every day that only exist because of a decision somebody made over 100 years ago that nobody remembers anymore? The further down this list we get, the more you realize that ghost towns are not just about abandonment. They are about the gap between what people believed was possible and what the land was eventually willing to give them. And nowhere is that gap more visible than in the final two. Town 2, Congress, Yavapai County. Congress has something almost no other ghost town on this list has, which is that part of it is still actually alive today. Gold was discovered in the surrounding hills by Dennis May in 1884, and the town quickly developed into two distinct sections. Milltown was where the ore got processed, closer to the mine with the mill, company offices, and a hospital. Lower Town was where commercial life happened, with restaurants, stores, saloons, 2 churches, and a school. The Congress mine was one of the most productive gold operations in the territory during the boom years before the post office finally closed in August 1938. Lower Town held on in some form. Milltown did not. When you visit today, you feel that contrast immediately. On one side, people are going about their day, occupied buildings, ordinary present tense life. And right next to it, close enough to walk between in under a minute, there is rusted machinery sitting where it was last operated, crumbling foundations disappearing into desert scrub, and 2 cemeteries that serve as the most lasting testament to everything that was once here. Most ghost towns ask you to imagine what life once looked like. Congress just shows you the contrast directly and lets that land however it is going to land. What do you think it feels like to live in the part of a town that survived, looking out every day at the part that did not? Town 1, Vulture City, Maricopa County. About 12 miles southwest of Wickenburg, the desert opens up, and then the buildings come into view. 16 original structures still standing, including an assay office built in 1884, a mess hall and a blacksmith shop, the whole layout still readable in front of you like something that was set down here and simply never collected. And at the edge of the property stands an old ironwood tree, 200 to 300 years old, that changes how you look at everything else the moment you learn its history. Vulture City was founded in 1863 when Henry Wickenburg discovered what became Arizona's most productive gold mine in history. The town reached close to 5,000 residents at its height, with stores, saloons, a school, and boarding houses, all built around a mine that produced 340,000 ounces of gold and 260,000 ounces of silver before the U.S. government shut down all non-essential gold mining operations in 1942 as part of the war effort. That ironwood tree is known as the hanging tree, and according to historical accounts recorded across multiple sources, 18 men were hanged from it for high grading, which was stealing ore directly from the mine. Some historians have debated how many of these accounts are fully accurate versus embellished over time, but the tree has stood there since long before the mine ever opened, and standing next to it, the silence feels different from anywhere else on the property. What makes Vulture City #1 is that you can actually walk through it and understand it. The mine at the center, the community arranged around it, every structure positioned in relation to the work happening underground. That legibility makes the absence of 5,000 people feel more immediate than anywhere else on this list. The gold ran out, the government stepped in, the people left, and Vulture City just stayed exactly where it was. What stays with you after visiting places like these is not the ruins or the history in the textbook sense. It is the feeling of standing somewhere that thousands of ordinary people once called home, where there were long, boring afternoons, and kids walking to a schoolhouse that is now empty, and realizing that all of it disappeared within a single generation and left almost nothing behind. These towns were built by people who had genuine reasons to believe in what they were creating, and Arizona is still holding on to more of them than most people will ever find. How many do you think are still out there, just far enough from the road that the world simply forgot they existed? If that is a question you want to keep exploring, this channel goes looking for exactly these kinds of places every single week, and subscribing means you will be there when the next one goes up.